I watched him bury the golden retriever at 3 a.m. So you can imagine my surprise when I saw the exact same dog catching a frisbee at noon. The dirt on the shovel was still fresh. I could see the mound of earth behind his hydrangeas from my second-story guest room window. I hadn't slept. I never really sleep. I just watch. That's what you do when you live in a cul-de-sac like this, a place where the lawns are manicured to within an inch of their lives, and the silence is so heavy it feels like a physical weight. People think the suburbs are boring. They aren't boring. They're just very, very good at hiding things. And Mr. Silas Vane, the man in the slate-gray colonial across the street, was hiding the impossible. I put down my binoculars and picked up my coffee. It was cold. I looked back at the yard. The dog, a fluffy, dopey-looking golden, was bounding around with a red frisbee in its mouth. Silas was laughing, tossing the plastic disc with a spry energy that betrayed his 60-something years. He looked like a grandfather from a cereal commercial, cardigan, thinning white hair, kind eyes. But I knew what I saw. I saw the limp body in the wheelbarrow 3 nights ago. I saw the hole. I saw the tears on his face as he patted the dirt down. So who was the dog in the yard? I grabbed my jacket. I needed to get closer. I walked out to my mailbox, pretending to check for mail that hadn't arrived yet. The air smelled of cut grass and impending rain. "Morning, Silas," I called out. My voice sounded too loud in the quiet street. Silas looked up, shielding his eyes against the overcast sky. The dog barked, a happy, rhythmic yelp. "Morning, Arthur. Beautiful day for it, isn't it?" "Sure is," I said, leaning against my white picket fence. "Buster looks full of energy. I thought I heard him whining a few nights back. He okay?" Silas didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He just smiled that soft, grandfatherly smile. "Oh, he had a bit of a stomach bug. Ate something he shouldn't have. You know how they are. But he's right as rain now." He threw the frisbee. The dog sprinted. And that's when I noticed it. The original Buster had a distinct patch of white fur on his left rear haunch. I'd seen it 1,000 times. This dog? The fur was solid gold. This wasn't Buster. I went back inside, my heart hammering a weird rhythm against my ribs. Most people would think, okay, the dog died, he got a new one immediately to avoid the heartbreak. It's weird, but not sinister. But then I started watching the delivery trucks. They didn't come during the day. FedEx and Amazon stopped by at normal hours, dropping off normal brown boxes. But the other trucks, unmarked white vans with mud-splattered license plates, came at 2 a.m. on Tuesdays. I set an alarm. Tuesday, 2:14 a.m. I was at the window, lights off, blinds cracked just enough to fit a camera lens. The van pulled into Silas's driveway. The driver, a woman in a heavy canvas coat, hopped out. She opened the back doors. Silas came out of his garage, wearing latex gloves. They unloaded a grandfather clock. It looked ancient, mahogany, with a shattered glass face. They carried it into the garage. 20 minutes later, they carried a grandfather clock out. It was identical. Same mahogany, same brass pendulum, but the glass face was pristine. They loaded the fixed clock into the van. The woman handed Silas a thick envelope. He nodded, and she drove off. I zoomed in on the photos on my laptop screen 10 minutes later. I enhanced the image of the first clock. There was a unique scratch on the side, a jagged scar in the wood. I looked at the second clock. The scratch was there, exactly there. He hadn't fixed it. You can't fix shattered antique glass in 20 minutes in a suburban garage. He had swapped it. But how do you have a duplicate of a specific scarred antique clock ready to go? I realized then that Silas Vane wasn't a restorer. He was an actuary of grief.
For the next 2 weeks, I became obsessed. I mapped the visitors. A soccer mom arrived in a panic with a shredded painting. She left an hour later with the painting intact. A teenager pulled up with a crushed bumper on a vintage Mustang. He left with the car looking showroom fresh. Silas was running a replacement service. He was the eraser of mistakes. If you broke something irreplaceable, if you killed the family pet, if you ruined an heirloom, Silas had the inventory to swap it out before the husband or the wife or the parents ever found out. It was brilliant. It was profitable. It was a lie. But the real trouble started on a Thursday. Thursday deliveries were rare. It was raining hard. A black Range Rover with tinted windows rolled up the driveway. It didn't look like a delivery. It looked like money. Serious, old money. A man and a woman got out. They were dressed in dark coats, huddled together under a massive umbrella. The woman was shaking. Even from across the street, through the rain and the double-paned glass, I could tell she was sobbing. Silas met them at the door. He didn't take them to the garage. He took them into the house. I waited. 1 hour. 2 hours. At 3 a.m., the garage door opened. I raised my binoculars. My breath fogged up the cold glass, and I had to wipe it away with my sleeve. The Range Rover backed up toward the garage. The trunk popped open. Silas walked out. He was leading someone. It wasn't a clock. It wasn't a dog. It was a girl. She looked about 16. She was wearing a red hoodie and jeans. She looked groggy, stumbling a bit, like she had just woken up from a long nap. The woman from the car rushed forward and grabbed the girl, hugging her violently. The man stood back, his posture slumping in relief. They ushered the girl into the car. Silas stood in the rain, watching them. The man handed him a briefcase, not an envelope, a briefcase. The car drove away.
I sat in the dark, the silence of the house screaming in my ears.
He wasn't just replacing things, he was replacing people. That girl, she looked like the neighbor's kid. No, I scanned my memory of the local missing persons reports. I pulled up the local news site on my phone. Missing, Sarah Jenkins, 16, last seen wearing a red hoodie. I looked at the photo. Blonde hair, blue eyes, small scar on the chin. The girl in the driveway had blonde hair, but from my angle, I couldn't see the face clearly. This was it. This was the line. Restoring a vase is one thing. Trafficking humans? Or cloning them? No, that's sci-fi nonsense. This had to be grounded. This had to be a performance. I had to know. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I waited for Silas to leave. He had a routine. Every Friday at 10 a.m., he went to the grocery store. 10:05 a.m., the garage door opened. Silas's sedan backed out. He drove down the street, turning left at the stop sign. I gave him 5 minutes. Then I grabbed my lockpick set. I'm not a criminal, but I lost my keys enough times in the 90s that I learned how to handle a tension wrench. I crossed the street. The neighborhood was dead. The silence was my accomplice. I went to the side door of the garage. It was locked, obviously. I worked the pick. Click. I slipped inside and closed the door behind me. The garage was spotless. It smelled of sawdust and ozone. The walls were lined with shelves, but they weren't full of tools. They were full of data. Binders, thousands of them. I pulled one off the shelf. Label, the Hendersons. I opened it. It was a dossier. Photos of their furniture, their car, their cat, samples of the cat's fur, paint chips from their walls, serial numbers of their electronics. I pulled another. The Millers. Same thing. Silas didn't just have an inventory of random junk. He had cataloged the lives of his clients before the accidents happened. He was selling insurance, but physical insurance. He pre-bought duplicates of their most fragile possessions.
But where did he keep the stock? I saw a door at the back of the garage. Heavy steel, keypad entry. I looked around. Silas was old school. He wrote things down. I checked the workbench, a notepad by the phone, indentations on the top page. I grabbed a pencil and rubbed the lead over the paper. 8421. I punched the code into the keypad. The light turned green. The door hissed open. I expected a warehouse. I expected a dungeon. What I found was a hallway. It looked like a hospital corridor, clean, white, sterile. I walked down it. There were rooms on either side with glass walls. Room 1, a living room setup, a specific beige sofa, a TV, a coffee table. Room 2, a kennel, 3 golden retrievers, all identical to the one in the yard, sleeping in cages. Room 3, a bedroom. I stopped at room 4. It was furnished like a teenager's room, posters on the wall, a messy bed. And sitting on the bed was a girl. She looked up. It wasn't Sarah Jenkins. It was a girl who looked a lot like Sarah Jenkins, but the nose was slightly different. The chin was sharper. She didn't look scared. She looked bored. She was scrolling on a tablet. She saw me and stood up, walking to the glass. "Are you the client?" she asked. Her voice was muffled through the glass. No, I said. Who are you? I'm the understudy, she said. My blood ran cold. The understudy? For the Jenkins gig, she said, popping a piece of gum. Wait, you're not Mr. Vane. Who are you? I stepped back. What is this place? It's the green room, she said casually. Look, if you're not supposed to be here, you should go. Mr. Vane gets really mad when the immersion breaks. The girl last night, I stammered. The one in the red hoodie. Who was she? That was Chloe, the girl said. She got called up. The real daughter OD'd, or ran away. I don't know the script. The parents paid the premium tier. Immediate replacement. Chloe had been prepping for that role for 6 months.
Studying the voice, the mannerisms. She nailed the audition. I felt bile rise in my throat. The parents, they know? They know it's not their daughter? The girl laughed, a cynical, sharp sound. Buddy, nobody knows their kids. They see what they want to see. Mr. Vane doesn't sell people. He sells continuity. Rich people hate disruption. If the daughter dies, it ruins the gala season. It ruins the family image. So they buy a new one, a better one. One that doesn't do drugs or talk back, but looks enough like the original to pass at a dinner party. That's insane, I whispered. It's supply and demand, she said. Now, seriously, get out. I have to practice my violin. The girl I'm replacing as a prodigy, and I still suck at vibrato. I heard the garage door rumble. Silas was back. I scrambled back down the hallway. I didn't have time to argue with the sociopathic theater kid behind the glass. I burst into the garage just as the main bay door began to lift. The sedan's headlights swept across the back wall. I dove behind a stack of crates covered in a tarp. Silas pulled in, the engine cut. He got out, humming a tune. He was carrying grocery bags. He walked right past my hiding spot. I could smell his cologne, sandalwood, and antiseptic. He went to the steel door, punched the code, and went inside. I didn't wait. I sprinted out the open garage door, staying low, darting across the street before the door could close fully behind him. I made it to my front door, shaking, sweating. I locked the deadbolt. I checked the windows. I sat on my floor, hyperventilating. I had to call the police. I had to tell someone. He had a stable of kids over there, training to replace dead children. I reached for my phone. And then I saw it. Sitting on my coffee table. A vase.
It was a blue, Ming-style vase. My mother's vase. The one I had knocked over and shattered 3 years ago during a party. I had been devastated. I had cleaned it up, thrown it away, and told everyone it was lost in a move. But there it was, sitting on my table, perfectly intact. There was a note under it. I picked it up. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned script. Arthur, you have such lovely things. It would be a shame if your life suffered any disruptions. I noticed your wife has been coughing lately. I have a candidate in room 6 who has her highs. She's very healthy, and she cooks. Let's keep the neighborhood quiet, shall we? Silas. I stared at the vase. It was perfect. It was flawless. I looked out the window. Silas was standing in his driveway, holding the empty grocery bags. He was looking right at my house. He waved. I looked at the vase again. I looked at the photo of my wife on the mantel. She had been sick lately, just a lingering cold, we thought. My phone felt heavy in my hand. If I called the cops, what would they find? Foster kids with signed contracts, actors with NDAs, a crazy neighbor with a conspiracy theory? And if I called them,
Silas would release the disruptions. I looked at my wife's photo. I looked at Silas. I put the phone down. I walked to the window and closed the blinds. The neighborhood was quiet. The grass was green. The dog across the street was barking, chasing a red frisbee. It wasn't the real dog, but it was a good dog. It was a happy dog. And in the suburbs, happy is all that matters. I sat down on the couch and stared at the vase. I wondered how much he charged. Just in case. Just in case.